All right, so welcome to the 9th episode of the How to Build a Black Nation with Power podcast. This podcast is about understanding and bringing together the many pieces of our empowerment and freedom pie, understanding under one unified umbrella to ensure that we don't become a permanent underclass in a country that was built on the backs of our ancestors. Taking into consideration what our people have done and what so many are currently doing, our empowerment and freedom march is most certainly not starting at square one. So the podcast is titled How to Build a Black Nation with Power because we, the Black Gold Nation, we're trying to get our people to understand that building a nation is possible 100% if we have certain things in place. If we have a strong foundation upon which we can build. Our foundation is built upon a church called the Shrines of the Black Madonna that started in 1953 out of Detroit, Michigan. So that is our foundation. You cannot have a strong nation without leadership, hence my conversation with this powerful brother this evening, and people that we already have on board and people that we continue to bring on board via the Black Gold National Leadership Election this year. And lastly, spirituality. I don't care how great your leadership is. I don't care what kind of foundation you have. If you don't have a connection with a higher power and with those with whom you're trying to build a nation, it's simply not going to work. But fortunately for us, we are a spiritual people by nature. So we can just understand who and what we are, then we can sew up that last piece. So building a Black nation with power means you got to have a strong foundation, strong leadership, and a spiritual connection with one another and a higher power. So one of those areas of leadership and expertise in national leadership has to be spirituality. And of course, developing our youth, which is why we're having a conversation with this brother this evening. So tonight's guest is Dr. Anthony P. Young, who is a candidate for our National Wellness Department, which includes the spirituality, mental, and physical health divisions. So Dr. Anthony, thank you very much for taking time out this evening to have a conversation with me. I'm sure you are extremely busy. Time is always fleeting. So I do thank you for taking time out to be with me this evening.
Oh, you're welcome. Good to be here.
Amen. So I'm going to read your very a brief synopsis of your bio because you've done a lot. So I'm going to read this and then I'll give you a chance to add to if anything is missing. So a little bit about Dr. Anthony P. Young. So Dr. Anthony has over 45. I'm sorry, Dr. Young has over 45 years of experience in the areas of clinical and forensic psychology and criminal justice. He is a past national president of the Association of Black Psychologists and is a founding member of the Denver Rocky Mountain Association of Black Psychologists. Dr. Young's educational background includes a BA in experimental psychology from Millikan University, an MA in psychology from Eastern Illinois University, and a doctorate in psychology and clinical psychology. Is that right?
Right.
From the University of Denver. Sometimes these letters throws me off. I gotta figure out what's what. So, from the Denver Graduate School of Professional Psychology. He is the recipient of numerous professional and community awards and is a graduate of the Colorado Springs Leadership Institute, sponsored by the Center for Creative Leadership and the L. Pomar Foundation, class of 2000. Okay. All right, brother. So first question, per that very brief bio, did I leave anything out? Was there anything you would like to add to what I read to give people a better understanding as to who you are?
Yeah, probably the most important thing you left off, which is not in my bio, is that I'm the son of Doris and Ivory.
All right.
I'm a father of 4 daughters who are grown and gone, and a grandfather of 5.
Oh, amen. All very important elements because without your parents, you wouldn't be here, and without our children, who are we? So thank you for adding that, brother. Amen. Okay, so aside from Queen Mother Leona, who's already a member of the Black Gold Nation, requesting that you become a candidate in the election, aside from her asking, why did you agree to become a candidate in what we're trying to build?
Well, once Queen Mother Leona told me about what the Black Gold Nation meant to her, and I've known the Queen Mother for about 20 plus years. We're very good friends. She's my spiritual sister.
Awesome sister.
And when she explained to me what Black Gold Nation is and what it aspires to do, that caught my attention because it fits right into who and what I am and my values, and being able to really propel our people forward in a very organized, proactive way is something which really resonates with me.
Amen. Amen. So what do you think makes you a viable candidate to lead our National Wellness Department?
First and foremost, I'm a good follower.
Amen. And that matters.
Absolutely. And my personal motto is that to serve is to follow.
Okay.
I mean, I should say, to lead is to follow, because when we're heading up any effort, it's really important to be able to understand and to work in sync with the people who are asking you to lead.
Right.
But even more so, being able to follow instructions, being able to follow a vision, not just of your own, but of someone else.
That's right.
Who has more experience than you. So important. I've known people who have been leaders who had absolutely no aptitude for being a follower. They didn't follow instructions. They let their ego get in the way, and a lot of bad things happen when we don't know how to follow.
Yes, sir.
And I've had many positions where I've learned how to be a follower, but also how to lead, how to inspire, how to encourage, and also how to follow not just a vision, but a game plan. Because we have to be willing to do that, as well as to work in sync with other counterparts.
Right.
Because we can be the best leader to ourselves, but leaders are useless without people who are working with them to help advance a mission or an effort. So
that's right. That's right. If we have a bunch of generals and no soldiers, guess where we're going? Nowhere.
Well, you're going to die real quick.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Everyone's pointing the finger saying it's their turn to do something rather than looking at themselves about what's their responsibility.
Yeah, and I'm glad you say that, Dr. Young. Do you prefer Dr. Anthony or Dr. Young? I'm assuming Dr. Anthony is what you prefer.
Young.
You prefer Dr. Young.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm glad you said that, Dr. Young, because when I founded this organization in 2016 or 2017, actually, I started with the premise that it had to be an umbrella organization. It had to be an organization that was ready, willing, and able to recognize the strengths that our people have right now today who are already doing things, because we're simply too far behind to think that one organization is going to do it.
Oh, absolutely.
We're too far behind to think that we have the luxury of doing one thing at a time. We got to do spirituality. No, we got to do education. No, we got to do business. No, we got to do foreign policy. And everybody is wrong, because we got to do all that stuff at the same time, which goes back to what you said. You have to be willing and have the ability to work with other people who may be A-types like yourself. Because if we don't find a way to work together with people who are experts in all these different areas by which we're being attacked, it's simply not going to work. So I'm glad you recognize that, because it will make my job a little easier.
Okay, great.
All right, so you have a number of degrees in psychology. My first question is, why psychology? And the second question is, has that always been a passion of yours? Why psychology, and has that always been a passion?
Well, first of all, it's always been a passion. In fact, when I was in 8th grade, I learned what psychiatrists did for a living.
Okay.
But once I discovered that they were actually medical doctors, and they had to go through medical school, and you had to be exposed to a lot of blood, that turned me off. So I really began to look at psychology. Growing up on the south side of Chicago in the public housing project, I was exposed to a lot of violence. So I had absolutely no desire to do anything that had to deal with blood. So as I looked at the field of psychology, it really opened my eyes to the fact that even as a young person, I knew that I had a lot of issues, a lot of challenges I needed to deal with for myself. So I figured if I went into psychology, I might be able to solve some of my own problems, and maybe, just maybe, be worthy to help someone else solve theirs.
So what were some of the issues that you discovered that you had with yourself?
Well, first of all, it was my neighborhood was very dangerous.
Okay.
There were a lot of gangs, and if you were a young Black man in high school, you were very likely to be attacked to either join a gang or just because you didn't belong to a gang.
Right.
That's my my buddy right here. I have to knock her down because she'll get up in front of the camera.
That's okay. It's all right.
she likes to photobomb. That's Kiana. Anyway, it was just a very, very dangerous neighborhood. And of course, being raised in the public housing project, there was a lot of poverty. Financially, all of us were very, very poor.
Yeah.
or I should say, a better way to say it is that we were broke.
Yeah, I can
We
relate.
were not poor because poor is a mentality.
Yes,
we
sir.
were broke.
Yeah.
All of us, for the most part, were just broke because of the social conditions in which our parents were raised, and we were raised under the same financial conditions.
Yeah.
So with a lot of low income areas, there's drug use, there's gang activity, but in addition to that, the public school system did a poor job overall at really preparing us to deal with the type of racism that we would be confronted with. So I had all these issues I was grappling with as a child, plus being the youngest of a single parent household. My mother raised 3 sons by herself.
Okay.
So I had a lot of issues I was trying to figure out.
Okay.
And I figured, well, let me study psychology. And at a very basic level, I knew that they help people to solve problems.
Okay.
And I wanted to be able to solve my own first and foremost.
Excellent. So about how old were you when you started to think that, okay, because of my environment, I have these internal issues? Because that's an advanced thought process. Because of my environment, I have these internal issues and I want to find out why. So about what age did you start to think on that level? Because that's advanced thinking, especially for a young person.
I was in 8th grade, and probably 7th grade.
Okay. Okay.
And more questions I asked, the more curious I became.
Awesome.
Because I wasn't finding any answers in my environment.
Okay.
The good thing that I had was a mother who had a 6th grade education.
Okay.
And she said, whatever you do, get a good education, because no one can ever take that away from you.
That's right.
But she also let me know that education was not just in the classroom. It was that the school of life that would actually teach me the most valuable lessons.
Right. Right. So what year was it when you were in 8th grade? What year was that approximately?
1967.
67. Okay, so that's pretty much at the height of the Black Power movements coming into the civil rights movements, right?
Well, absolutely. In fact, the Black Panthers were very, very active in my neighborhood, and
right.
And if I was to join anything, it would have been the Black Panthers.
Okay.
Not the street gangs. By the way, my mother had made it real clear that the only gang that we would ever belong to was called family.
That's right. The family gang.
Yeah. And she did not play.
Amen. Amen. A strong Black woman is always important.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
So as a young teenager, I was involved with the anti-war movement. That was the anti-Vietnam movement, the human rights movement, which the media called the civil rights movement.
Sure.
But at a very young age, I was involved with that because that really resonated with me. Looking at how we could address our own issues, because we as a people had a lot to deal with in Chicago, despite the fact that there were some Black folks who were doing very well. The bulk of us were not.
Right. Right.
And being able to really address the inequities which were going on, which of course still continue to exist, just in a different form sometimes, but same issues I was dealing with in 1967. Here we are, 2022. Yeah. Same issues.
Same issues.
And the same issues that my grandparents and great-grandparents had to deal with. Of course, their circumstances were more overt than ours, but still just horrible.
Yeah. Amen. So aside from your mother, who else do you credit as an influencer in your study in the field of psychology?
Well, in the field of psychology, I would say probably Brother K.K. Kamban, also known as Joe Baldwin. He was a psychologist. He's transitioned now. Dr. Amos Wilson, Brother Naeem Akbar, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, powerful sister, and I could go on and on. All of those really had an influence upon my thinking and being able to really further my understanding, not just of psychology, but also of this reality that we've had to deal with. Living in a very racist, or I should say white supremacist environment in this country, in our states, in our cities, being able to really understand the psychological mind game which have been played on us as a people. And that sometimes because of that, we play it on ourselves and on each other in terms of the type of value system that we find ourselves being inculcated with from the womb to the tomb, anti-Black values that we're raised with. We're rewarded for behaving like the oppressor or like the people who had enslaved our ancestors.
That's right.
But we get rewarded for that, and we oftentimes find ourselves more often than not being punished for being pro-Black.
Right.
And I would dare say for us, if we're not for ourselves, who are we for?
Right, right. In the shrine, we call that, and we'll get into the Shrines of the Black Madonna, which is the foundation for the Black Gold Nation. We call what you just described operant conditioning, where you are awarded and or punished for certain behaviors depending on how society views that behavior.
Yes.
So I'm glad you pointed that out because it's important that we know that, because of course we have to create our own mechanisms of awarding proper behavior and dealing with behavior that's detrimental to our forward progress and our survival. So you were a part of the human rights, civil rights, anti-Vietnam, anti-war movements. When you started to learn about Dr. Joe Baldwin, Amos Wilson, Naeem Akbar, especially Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, was it a I don't want to call it what's the term, when you have two competing ideas in your head?
Cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, was there some cognitive dissonance in your head in that you were physically active, involved in these movements, but you have all these Black people talking about things that had to be new at some point? So was it difficult for you to grasp that, or was it easy because you came out of Chicago and you saw a lot of it?
Well, it was easy because I grew up in Chicago and I saw a lot of it. But let me just mention that I didn't meet Kobe Kamban and Naeem until I became involved with the Association of Black Psychologists back in 1977.
Okay.
So in terms of my cognitive evolution, if you will, it started in Chicago. I ended up going to grad school for my doctorate in Denver. And that's where I met Kobe Kamban. And that's where we also started the Association of Black Psychologists. So being within that realm, I met people like Dr. Francis Cress Welsing and many others, which really further sharpened my ability to really understand these games which have been played on us psychologically.
Yeah. So you are a founder or one of the founders of the Association of Black Psychologists?
I'm one of the founding members of the Denver Rocky Mountain Association of Black Psychologists. The National Association of Black Psychologists started in 1968, and I was just entering high school.
Right.
I knew nothing about Black psychologists at that time, but when I moved to Colorado in 1977 from Chicago, there were so few of us who were Black in Denver and in Colorado Springs, where I live, who were psychologists or involved with the mental health field. So we came together to actually find ways to proactively support each other and to also address the various issues within our communities that we can have some impact upon. So we're a membership organization designed to enhance the psychological well-being of the Black community, nationally and globally. So that's who and what we are in a nutshell. So we're of various backgrounds. We're educational psychologists, we're clinical, we're forensic, we're organizational, industrial. We work in all areas. Within the community, within corporate America, within higher education, and in private practice, and working for various mental health centers. So we're across the board.
Okay. I'm sure psychology as a science, it's probably have the same foundation, regardless of what group and or race and or culture you're working with. But do white psychologists study and or treat their target market different than what a black psychologist might study and the ways he or she might treat his or her target market?
Well, let me put it this way. All of us, for the most part, and I'm referring to the vast majority of African-American, African descent people who are psychologists or in the mental health field, we've studied at predominantly Caucasian institutions. However, the real education is where we actually come together and we study our own history and culture and cosmology. For example, white psychology, or if you will, European-centered psychology, we'll say that the psychology is the study of human behavior. Okay. And it can trace its roots to 1879 in Roots Laboratory in Germany. Okay. That's not where our psychology came from, because we know that our ancients, and I'm talking about our ancients in Kemet, or Egypt, if you will, talked about psyku, which is basically the root of what the Europeans later called psychology. Okay. But psyku is the illumination of the spirit.
The elimination of the spirit?
Yes, or illumination, if you will, of the spirit. Okay. The causing light to come to the spirit. All right. And that's what we've traced our psychology back to. Okay. Not the European psychology. So we have very dichotomous ways of looking at the world. And I would dare say, it didn't cause cognitive dissonance for me, understanding the root, knowing that the psychology that the Europeans developed works very well for their purposes. Sure. Very, very well. Right. The psychology that we developed as a people, as African people, over 8,000 years ago, worked very well for us. Right. Our problem is that we found ourselves being conquered and dominated by someone else's psychology, mentally, and also being physically dominated, due to the conquest that started in ancient times, and we can go back to when the Arabs invaded Africa, and from the 7th century on up, we find that we've been enslaved massively by either the Arabs or by the Europeans. That's right. Yeah. So, but once again, our psychology existed thousands of years before we were conquered, and that's core to who and what we are. Our psychology is really spiritual, not what most people would think of psychology as being. So being the spiritual people that we are, we were able to actually build the most ancient, most advanced civilizations for thousands of years, uninterrupted for thousands of years, based upon our spirituality. And our psychology is just part of that. Right. How we think about ourselves, our connection with the creator, whatever term we care to use for that, but that actual connection that we have with each other was the thing that allowed us to build our civilizations. Right. Not just our cultures, but really a way of being, which was civil among us. Totally different than what most people would call civilization, because what we have now is not civilization. In this country, we have culture. We have European imposed culture. Right. It's not a civilization.
Right. Do you think, in order for us to get back, like I like to say that the world is out of balance because we're out of balance. Yes. Because we're not understanding who and what we are. The world is being led by some psychopaths. So would you agree that in order for us to get back to building the kind of communities, cultures, civilizations that we need, we absolutely must get back to our fundamental understanding of psychology, which includes the spirit, the psycho, the mental, the physical, and everything else? Do we have to get back to that in order for us to move forward, so to speak?
That's the only way.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is the only way to reclaim our own humanity and our own genius. We have to really reinstill within us our own value system, our own ways of being in this world, knowing who we are, and that we don't have to apologize for anything, because we have already accomplished more than what the people who have conquered us would ever want to admit.
Right.
But that's okay. That's their issue. Our issue is that we've whipping out of our Black minds.
Yes, sir.
I heard Dr. Chancellor Williams make that statement back around 1983, where we were having a national convention of the Association of Black Psychologists.
Yep.
And Dr. Chancellor Williams, the brother who wrote The Destruction of Black Civilization,
yes,
which
sir.
all of us should read at some point,
yep.
talked about the fact that we've been out of our Black minds. We have had a white mind transplant.
Yes, sir.
From the womb to the tomb, because from the moment that we were kidnapped, the colonizer, the enslavers' whole game plan was about removing us from our natural environment, but also how we think and how we feel and how we believe naturally.
Yep.
So the value system, which would have been really imposed upon us, is alien. That's why we function so poorly overall
yep.
within this type of culture in America, because it's dominated by white supremacy. And all that is about making sure that we are always in a lesser than oppressed position. So even though a few of us may kind of break through some of those obstacles,
yep.
the vast majority of us have been stuck.
Yeah.
Mentally, physically, economically, spiritually,
yes, sir.
Because of someone else's value system, which has been imposed upon us, and is manifested in every institution, including religion, yep. Particularly religion.
Definitely religion. So I like to make the comparison that for us, religion is Novocaine. It knocks us out. It puts us to sleep and disconnects us from anything that is really going to move us forward toward building an African-centered spiritual civilization. And as long as we are adhering to someone else's definition and or understanding of religion, yes. We're always going to be out of our minds, so to speak. So amen to that. Would you say that you know, non-melanated people, non-African people, they're still struggling to understand how we built the pyramids, how we did what we did? Do you think they will always misunderstand that because they don't have the connection with their higher self, their spiritual selves? There's a lack of connection, which means they will never understand how we did it because they're not connected as we were.
Well, absolutely. In fact, I like how Dr. Marima Ani put it in her work, Yurugu.
Okay.
Basically, she talked about Caucasians being despirited.
Yes, sir.
They've lost their spirituality, and instead they use religion. And we know how that has been used as a tool of oppression. So the ancients had it correct back in ancient Kemet, because forever Europeans were, or people who were Caucasian, were not allowed to study at the mystery schools.
That's right. That's right.
And when they were, it was very, very, very few. It wasn't until Alexander the Thief, they called him Alexander the Great, right. You know, from Persia came and conquered. Sir. Ever since then, Europeans have been trying to figure out our mystery system, our way of knowing, which is quite different than theirs. Yeah. And they have fragments of it. But basically, I don't believe they can ever really grasp it because it's not within their reach. Right. So therefore, we represent something that they can never have. Right. And that's that spiritual core. Yeah. So of course, everything that the white supremacists cannot control, they seek to destroy. Yeah. If they can't control it, it's targeted for destruction. So that's why our ancient temples in ancient Kemet were destroyed by the, particularly by the Romans and the quote unquote Roman Catholic Church, and every rendition of that since then, because they really fear it because they cannot understand it. Yep. Yep.
Do you think, well, before I ask that question, you said, the sister you quoted, she said that Caucasians have been despirited. Yes. That would imply that they have a spirit, which some people would push back against. So would you say that they have been despirited, or they've never had a spirit like ours?
I would say that they've been despirited because when we really understand how they originated with the African and how they mutated over thousands of years, over 50,000 of years during the Ice Age. After Africans had migrated into Europe and into Asia, the Ice Age came. Our brothers and sisters got stuck there. They had to live in caves. They lost their melanin. Their bodies became covered with hair. The whole way of being was about surviving.
Yeah.
Surviving these harsh
environmental
conditions.
That's right.
Whereas we didn't have that issue in Africa. We never had to develop that survival of the fittest attitude.
That's right.
Whereas with them, it's always about competition, being the best fan,
right,
working against each other rather than being communal and being cooperative. Yep. So their way of thinking totally shifted once they found themselves in that harsh environment, and that mentality has stayed with them ever since. There's a book called The Iceman
Inheritance.
And he talks about that. So I mean, from a purely physiological vantage point and historical vantage point, that's it. That's why they think in the manner that they do. Now, they did have a spirit at one point because they were us.
That's right. That's right.
They got stuck.
Yeah.
And there's some horrible conditions that made them basically evil.
Yeah. 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 I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's one of my questions. Does evil exist? Which we will most certainly get there. So would you say, Dr. Young, that our innate spiritual gifts and ability, do you think that is what makes us a threat, or is it what Dr. Francis Quest Walsing says, our melanin? Is it our natural spiritual ability and innateness, or is it the melanin, or is it both?
I would say it's both and then some.
And then some.
Okay, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, because you know as well as I do that they most certainly study us. And they understand us probably more than we understand ourselves. So if they understood us on any level, it would make sense why they would be threatened by us, because if we do nothing else but have sex, then they're in trouble because the black gene is dominant. And I think they know that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And their fear, of course, is that if they remove their white supremacist systems,
that's right,
they will do to them what they've done to us.
Of course.
But the fact of the matter is that that's not even in our nature.
It's not our nature. We don't roll like that.
The only thing, I mean, at a very, very fundamental level, the only thing that we have ever wanted was to be left the hell alone.
Right.
On the continent, as well as here. However, it is not in their nature to leave us alone so that we can thrive and not be bothered by them, because they have this basic thrust to dominate, to control, and that is totally antithetical to who and what we are.
Right.
We're not to be dominated or controlled, because we will rebel and fight against that from the womb to the tomb.
That's right.
But we'll find ourselves constantly in this conflict because we're not to be dominated.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that their drive, their innate drive to dominate, control, rob, rape, plumage, whatever, to take power, to be in control, you think their drive for that is a strength, and our drive to be communal, work together, and to not necessarily think like that is a weakness?
Well, I would say that, first of all, their life thrust is just simply destructive.
Okay.
And that can never be a strength. It's just simply destruction. Yep. That's why they've been able to create weapons that can wipe out life on the planet many times over. Yep. Because their whole thrust is really destructive.
Yes, sir.
Whereas our strength has always been our spirituality, our connection with the Creator, as well as our connection to each other. Okay. Because out of that, our genius comes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's our greatest strength. So being able to return back to some of our basic core values and ways of being really allows us to really be much stronger than what the colonizer can ever imagine. And that's what they're afraid of.
Yeah, I can dig it. Okay, we talked about your influencers as it relates to psychology. but you also have a degree in criminal justice. So why the study of criminal justice, and what who are some of your influencers in that discipline?
Some family members.
Why y'all commit those crimes? I got to understand these brothers.
No, actually, well, when I was growing up, as I mentioned earlier, I grew up in a very dangerous neighborhood. There were lots of people who were involved with the juvenile justice system and the criminal justice system, neighbors, some older family members, and it's like, okay, well, that area had never intimidated me because there were family and friends who were involved with the system.
Right.
And when I was finishing up my master's degree, one of my professors had lectured my cohorts on the fact that we needed to find a niche in psychology, something that we could really do well in and excel, because there's a lot of psychologists. So what would make you stand out from all the others? So I decided to go into forensic psychology because I understood the criminal justice system fairly well, having seen family members and friends go through it.
Yeah.
And what I knew also is that when people come out of an incarcerated situation, that there's a big need for our community to actually embrace them rather than to shun them.
That's right.
Because after they pay their debt, whatever the hell that is, to society, we know that 97% at least of all those people incarcerated are going to come out. That's important.
Yep. And they're going to come out and come back to the community, because that's where they're from. Yes, sir.
Exactly. That's my point. They're going back to exactly where they left.
Yeah.
So being able to develop programs within our community that really will allow them to readjust better and to reintegrate them, to re-engage them within our work as a people, rather than shunning them. So early on, I decided to go into criminal justice, or if you will, forensic psychology, to be able to assist those who were in the system better.
Okay.
And then at one point, after I finished my doctorate, I was asked if I would serve on the state parole board. And I served as a member of the state parole board for 5 years, 2 terms in the 1990s. And in 2011, I was asked if I would serve as chairman of the state parole board here in Colorado.
Okay.
And I did that for a couple of years. And my whole purpose, once again, is to make sure that our folk got a fair shot.
That's right.
Because typically we don't. All things being as they are in our society, even when inmates actually apply for parole, if you're Black, you're at a disadvantage.
That's
just like we're at a disadvantage in most every other area in the society.
Right.
So I wanted to make sure that our people got a fair shake, both the men and the women who were there, who were coming out. All of them, but particularly those who are Black, because we know what obstacles we have to overcome constantly.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Cool. Okay, cool. All right. So you have 45 years of experience in the areas of clinical and forensic psychology and criminal justice. So most people may not understand or know, especially the last one, but the second one. What is clinical psychology and what is forensic psychology?
Well, overall, clinical would encompass the areas of psychology that would provide psychotherapy, psychological evaluations, consultation on wellness and mental health, all the way from the people who are the most adept, those who can only get more better, as Spike Lee would say. They're at the top of their game already, all the way to those people who are out of touch with reality because they're psychotic. They have hallucinations and a lot of other detachments from reality. So clinical psychology will embrace all of that.
Okay.
Anyone at any point in that continuum, whereas counseling psychology is a small segment, or educational psychology is a small segment, clinical really covers the whole spectrum, whole spectrum. And we can specialize within clinical in various ways. So one of my specialties is forensics. That really involves psychology within the criminal justice system. So as in my case, I've done psychological evaluations for the courts. I've been a consultant for probation. I've worked in prisons. I've worked in halfway houses. I've worked in agencies with high-risk kids. So forensic would really cover the psychologists who work within the criminal justice system, or also the juvenile justice system as well.
Okay. Okay. So a forensic psychologist is simply someone who uses their understanding of psychology as it relates to criminal justice.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
Basically.
All right.
And one more segment of that, and that would also be the civil case. Okay. Because if you're involved with the court, mm-hmm. In any capacity in civil cases, you could also be considered a forensic psychologist.
Okay. I got it. Okay. So I'm not sure how much you know about Black Gold Nation. I'm sure how much Queen Mother shared with you. But as I said earlier, our foundation comes out of a church mm-hmm. called the Shrines of the Black Madonna that was founded by a brother named Albert B. Clegg Jr., mm-hmm. African title and name Jaramogi Abebe Ajiman. His premise was that, quote, I'm quoting him on this, mm-hmm. Black people in America have been programmed for inferiority deliberately, consistently, exquisitely. The white man's declaration of Black inferiority is basic to all American life. Mm-hmm. There is no institution in America, no aspect of American life that does not basically reflect the declared inferiority of all Black people. Not poor Black people, not ignorant Black people, not uncouth Black people, but all Black people have been declared inferior. This mm-hmm. declaration of Black inferiority is the foundation on which American history has been built, right? So that's mm-hmm. a quote. Jaramogi preached that Black people have been rendered psychologically and spiritually sick and damaged via 400 years of systematic terror, oppression, and destruction. And until we implement systems to reverse this damage, we're always going to act in an inferior capacity. My question to you, Dr. Young, is would you agree with that assessment?
I totally agree. And in fact, some of our other deep thinkers, such as Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, Neely Fuller Jr., Dr. Amos Wilson, many others have said the same thing, because that's a game which has been played on us, and which continues to be played. Right. If we can think of ourselves as being inferior, mm-hmm. They have us.
Checkmate.
They have us. Yes. Right. And certainly we have an environment in this country where every institution has as its undergirding white supremacy. Mm-hmm. So we are always at a disadvantage.
That's right.
Always, by design. It's not by accident. And one of the greatest fears that the white people have of us is that we will somehow outcompete them in anything.
That's right.
Anything. I don't care what it is. They always want themselves to be superior. Yeah. And that's their illness. Whereas with us, we're just simply doing our best to survive and thrive. We're not even thinking about them. Sure. For the most part,
Yeah. I think, Dr. Young, I think if all things being equal, and if we're just allowed to be us, I think we will outcompete. I think we will outshine, because everything we do, good, bad, or otherwise, excuse my French, but we'll take some bullshit to another level and everybody will follow us.
That's right. So
everything we do, we just funky like that. It's who we are.
Yes. And also, speaking of that, one of our greatest strengths is our resilience. We have this legacy of beating the odds against the odds every time that we realize that we have the will. If we have the will, we can do it. But so oftentimes our will get beaten down. Mm-hmm. And then we think that we can't. And then we're twice defeated, as Marcus Garvey would say, because we don't even try sometimes. So being able to realize that we stand upon the shoulders of those who came before us, who beat the odds against the odds. And guess what? These were the strongest people on the planet. Right. Because guess what? We're still here. We're having this discussion. Because if the enslavers had their way, this discussion would be impossible. Right. But we survived the Miller Passage, the years of enslavement, the years of Jim Crow.
That's right.
So, the fact that we are here speaks to how strong we are. We just need to know that and act upon it.
That's right, Dr. Young. As I said in the presentation I gave to you, and I say to other people all the time, we've been tested. We've been through the fire. We didn't come out unbroken. We didn't come out 100% whole, and we didn't come out unscathed. But we did come out of it.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
And we should wear that reality, that truth as a badge of honor, because there are a lot of groups that came into contact with Caucasians that did not come out of the fight.
They got
exterminated,
yes.
wiped out.
Mm-hmm.
So we should remember that we're the offspring of the strongest that made it through. Go ahead.
Absolutely, because we are the descendants of the ones they could not kill.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That speaks to our strength. So we have nothing to prove because we've done it and we're doing it.
Dr. Young, I say that there are only two things that can stop us: a higher power that is not against us, and us. Mm-hmm. If we decide not to be stopped, then we won't be stopped.
Absolutely.
And that's a powerful statement. So you're here because you are a candidate in the Black Gold Leadership election in the over the wellness department. That includes spiritual health, psychological, that includes spiritual health, mental health, and physical health. Mm-hmm. If you had a magic wand and you won the election, because there's no guarantee you're gonna win it. I'm trying to find you some competition. so if you were to win, and I'm searching, if you were to win the election, and you are given the charge of getting our people on track to being well as it relates to spirituality, mental health, and physical health, where would you start? If you have a 20 teams of Black people in 20 different cities, and they're looking to Dr. Young to help us be well as it relates to spiritual, mental, and physical health, where do you start that journey?
Well, the first thing would be to certainly identify those people who didn't win the election and bring them on board.
Yes, sir. That's your cabinet.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
First and foremost, because regardless of who's the leader per se, we're all on the same team and we have the same purpose. So we should not be at odds, about who's the leader and who's the second. It's like that's Eurocentric stuff.
I agree.
And we don't need it. But certainly being able to do a real good assessment of where we're at. That's been done in many different ways.
Okay.
And I'm not saying that we have to reinvent the wheel or redo something which has been done previously, but we need to be able to pull together information that will illuminate all of the information that we need in the different areas about where we are at. First and foremost, we know how we get there, okay? So we don't need to really overanalyze that. Sure. But where we're at, what efforts have been implemented in the past that worked? Mm-hmm. Because we can always build upon success.
Sure.
But at the same time, we also need to know what didn't work.
Right.
It was tried, and why? Why didn't it work?
Yes, sir.
And using that as a game plan to build upon, because we're not understanding, or should I say, we're not just dealing with this current reality, because there's a history behind how we get to where we're at, and being able to understand that. My background being psychology, I like to understand the roots of the problem. How did they begin? How are these challenges really perpetuated? Mm-hmm. And what has worked in the past? Because we have all done something that was very effective.
That's right.
Being able to identify those issues as really strengths, and then building upon that so that we can actually create a plan.
Yep.
A good strategy. So we're talking about there's lots of terms which could be used to describe the process, but basically that's what it would be.
Yeah.
Being able to understand those elements and really come up with something which is not just aspirational, but something which is practical. Things that people can do in their everyday lives.
That's right.
I'm not an academic, even though I taught at the university for about 25 years as an adjunct. I'm a clinician.
Okay.
I'm a hands-on person. I like to see things which are concrete come to fruition. Right. Not just the abstract.
Right. And would you consider that assessment, would that be psychological assessment, a spiritual assessment, or would that include tangible things that we have going on?
All of the above.
I'm glad you said that.
All of the above.
I'm glad you said that, because we call that a SWOT analysis.
There you go. That's
right.
That's one way to describe it. Yes.
Yes, sir. Beautiful.
And there's other terms, which really describes the same process.
Amen.
But that's the process.
Yeah. As long as we have a process, then we got something we can work with.
For sure.
And that's the goal.
And also, since we're dynamic people, we're organic.
Yes, sir.
We know that whatever we identify and whatever we develop, it's a living thing.
That's right.
It's modified based upon changing circumstances.
That's right.
So as we learn and grow, it also learns and grows. So it's not something which is stagnant.
Yep. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I venture to say that if it's stagnant, it ain't us. Because we don't do stagnation. We really don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But and on that note, the thing that we always have to fight against and guard against is this Eurocentric thinking that we have all been conditioned into.
Okay.
Once again, so if we're actually true to developing an African-centered mindset, we will keep in check our own Eurocentric training.
That's right.
Okay, because that's going to always be there and something that we have to fight against and guard against and make sure that we just really keep in check because it can seep into our interactions with each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which can be quite unhealthy. Then we get into this one-upmanship, we get into sexism, and we get into all of the other craziness that the European is engaged in.
Yeah, in the Shrine, we describe those two things as one, niggerization, acting like a nigger because you're allowing the white man's belief system, his value system, his way of thinking to seep into your African mind and destroy it. Niggerization. And the defense against that, the bulwark against that is the group. Like you just said, if you don't have a strong group that's going to keep the individual in check, then that European is going to seep in because that European is everywhere.
Absolutely.
And you got to have a strong team that's going to, you got to have a strong tribe that's going to keep the individual in check. Otherwise, the individual will run rampant and operate on his basis, his most basic individualistic self, which is a problem.
Which is anti-Black, anti-us altogether. Yes, so certainly being able to hold each other accountable, holding ourselves accountable, yes, first and foremost, allows us to actually engage in holding each other accountable. But we do it out of love.
And respect.
Absolutely, not out of something punitive, because that just really drives wedges between people, and it creates such negativity that no one wants to be engaged with that. So being very mindful about how we keep each other in check and being willing to be checked.
Right.
Because
go ahead.
Going back to our mother culture, is that even in ancient times, and even now in terms of how the structure socially is outside of the European conditioning that our brothers and sisters have on the continent, we know that everyone is held in check.
That's right.
All the way from the child through the elder, everyone is held accountable.
Right.
And when we get away from that, we find that some people feel that they're privileged.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's because they have a position or title.
Or title.
But in ancient times, everybody was held accountable.
Yeah, Dr. Young, we have to get back to understanding that no one is more important than the group. Yes. Because the group is everything. The group is our survival. And if we start elevating individuals above the group, then you got chaos, which we can't survive in the chaotic environment.
Well, not psychologically, not spiritually,
yes, sir.
And marginally physically.
Yeah, amen. So Dr. Young, would you say that our most valuable asset and even our greatest weapon, would that be our spirituality or our minds?
Well, I wouldn't separate the two.
Amen. Good answer, brother. You passed.
Because too oftentimes we get into this dichotomous thinking.
Yeah.
It's either this or it's that.
Yeah.
And I would dare say it's both and some.
Yeah, there you go. Amen.
It's all of that. It's not, like the Europeans would talk about mind, body, and soul.
Yep.
Basically, look, it's the same thing. It's just different aspects of the same thing, our beingness.
Right. Our beingness. I like that. Yes, I like that.
So what part of our beingness are we addressing? Because all of them are interconnected anyway.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We just don't know it because we've never been taught it and we don't understand it.
And going back to our source, going back to our ways of knowing.
Yes, sir.
That our ancestors knew this so well on the continent. And we just need to reclaim some of this which has been distorted.
That's right. Yeah. Looking back to move forward, which we call Sankofa.
Right.
As a matter of fact, Queen Mother Leona and two other sisters, Fundi Fabu and Fundi Akita, they're working on a podcast that we think they're going to be ready to launch next month called Spiritual Sankofa. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. Okay, next question. Would you ascribe Black people's psychological condition to be that of Stockholm Syndrome?
No.
So explain to me what Stockholm Syndrome is and why you would not ascribe our behavior as that of having Stockholm Syndrome.
Well, Stockholm Syndrome came out of this media concept, and that's what it was. It came out of the media. Okay. There was a bank robbery in Stockholm in 1973, I think it was.
Okay.
And basically, there were a number of people taken hostage, and during this process of them being held hostage, they began to identify affectionately with their captors. Now, if they had not been captive, they probably would have hated the people robbing the bank.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so they begin to identify and have positive regard for their captors. It's like, okay. There's been a lot of studies, not research, but really studies about the Stockholm Syndrome. And we know that in a very, very narrow sense, it helps to describe the behaviors of the captors, pardon me, of the hostages. Okay. Another situation that happened was Patty Hearst, the heiress who was kidnapped, and she was involved with a group that robbed the bank, and that was an example of the Stockholm Syndrome as well. But basically, that does not describe Black folk in our condition, because we were not held captive in some type of robbery. We were kidnapped.
That's right.
We were kidnapped. We were raped. We were murdered. We were mutilated. We were terrorized, and that terrorism continues to this very day. That's right. In fact, there's not been one day that Black folks in this country have not been terrorized in some form. That's right. Either physically, economically, spiritually, or what have you. So there's been lots of ways we have continued to be terrorized. So the Stockholm Syndrome was something that ended. That robbery ended after a short period of time. Our conditions in this country has been
ongoing.
There you go, for centuries.
Yeah.
So no comparison.
So if I'm sorry, what were you about to say?
What the educational system has done, and every institution, which is a white supremacist institution at its core, what it has done, it has really rewarded Black folk for emulating the enslavers, for valuing their value system, for taking on their meaning of reality as their own. And that in itself is very much at the core of why we are so many times engaged in self-hatred or self-destructive behavior in various forms.
Okay.
So that's not Stockholm. That was short-term. It was a very isolated type of situation. What we're talking about is something which has been centuries in its making, and some of our deep thinkers have really dissected that this whole process quite a bit. In fact, Kobe Kamban, Dawoodi, Amos Wilson, Naeem Akbar really have really talked about this in very, very great detail in terms of how we have created such conditions whereas we engage in menticide.
Yeah.
Bobby Wright out of Chicago. That's psychologist who transitioned some years ago, talked about the fact that that we have been so brainwashed and so conditioned to identify with the oppressor that we don't even recognize that that's what we're doing.
Right.
Particularly in terms of the value systems, the customs,
That's right.
our taste, our fashions, and anything else which would emulate those people who have enslaved us. So not the Stockholm Syndrome, totally different. We have undergone centuries of social conditioning.
Got it. So
to our own detriment.
So you're saying it can't be Stockholm Syndrome because Stockholm Syndrome has an end date and our date is not ended.
Exactly.
Got
yeah. It. Plus, it was the process was real different. The people who were held captives during the bank robbery, they were not raped.
Right.
They were not beaten.
Yeah.
They were not mistreated.
Right.
Other than being held captive.
Right.
They were fed.
Yeah. Which pales in comparison to what we went through.
There you go. They were allowed to use the bathroom.
Yes, sir. I got you. Okay.
So no comparison there. I mean, just different dimensions.
Gotcha. Okay. So with your background in forensic psychology, you would have a pretty good understanding of critical race theory, correct?
Yeah.
You're laughing before I ask the question. So what is your understanding of CRT, and why do you think white people, or people who think like white people, why do you think they're in such a tizzy over this CRT thing, which is so funny to me?
Well, first and foremost, critical race theory came out of law school. There's a brother named Derek Bell that really wrote a wonderful book about critical race theory. And basically, at its most fundamental level, it's just describing how white supremacy has influenced institutions in this country. It could be educational, it could be medicine, it could be government, whatever. It just simply provides a frame of reference to identify how racism, or better yet, white supremacy, to be very clear, has affected these various institutions. That's all it is. So basically, we're talking about telling the truth about some things that make a lot of white folks feel very uncomfortable. And I think there's a number of people who are very vocal, white supremacists. They would say that we should not teach critical race theory because white people might feel uncomfortable learning the truth about what they've done and what they're still doing and what they hope to do. So that's it in a nutshell. We're just simply talking about telling the truth. In fact, I remember when Black Studies programs started at many colleges and universities, they were forced basically by Black students to have these programs which would provide further education about our own history, our own culture. And in talking about our history and culture, we also have to deal with the issue of how we get to this continent in the 15th century.
That's right.
Through the Europeans, even though we were here a long time before then, but how enslavement has really impacted our beingness for several centuries. So being able to understand that history, certainly if we're going to be honest, we will have to say that and acknowledge that we were not migrant workers.
That's right. That's right.
We were not underpaid servants that came here on the enslavement ships.
Yes, sir.
So just simply telling the truth.
Right.
And why some white people would be so taken aback is that it really flies in the face of white superiority.
Right.
When you look at the horrible massacres that they've perpetuated upon Black folks and people that we call Native American, et cetera, when we really understand how twisted their history is as Caucasians, when you understand that, it would totally shatter this myth about white superiority. So they don't want that myth to be shattered because their identity is built upon the lie of white superiority.
Yes, sir. I agree.
So when you shatter the lie, what do they have to hold on to? They will be exposed for what they are exactly, as Dr. Ani would call it.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. Okay. So if you missed the beginning of the show, you're listening to the How to Build a Black Nation with Power podcast, where we seek to understand and bring together the many pieces of our empowerment and freedom puzzle under one unified roof to ensure that we don't become a permanent underclass in the country that was built on the backs of our ancestors. Taking into consideration what our people have done and what so many are currently doing, our empowerment and freedom puzzle and march is most certainly not starting at square one. Tonight's episode is our 8th episode, and our guest is Dr. Anthony P. Young, a Black Gold National election candidate for the Wellness Department, and that department encompasses the spiritual, mental, and physical health divisions, and those are 3 different divisions. So, Dr. Young, how do you define spirituality?
Well, spirituality is our connection with the Creator and with each other.
Okay.
It's a way of being. It's a connection. It's not a doctrine. When we think about religion, which is something which is man-made, it has rules and dogma.
Yep.
It's either you're in the in group or you're in the out group.
Yep.
Religion is something which is very divisive, and it also creates rifts between people because either you're of one belief system or you're of another.
Yep.
And the way that it exists within our realm is that these various faith-based traditions are at odds because their way is the only way.
That's right.
And if you don't believe how they believe, you're on the outside, and you're going to hell in the handbasket, and you'll have fire and brimstone forever.
Yeah. Or worse, time to go to war because you don't believe what I believe.
Oh, absolutely. So religion has been used as a tool of oppression.
Yes, sir.
Forever.
Yep.
And the tools of conquest.
Yep.
Whereas spirituality is something that really connects us. And it's not like you have to have the same relationship with the Creator that I have, but we know that that's where everything emanates from.
Right.
We know that we have to honor not just the Creator, but the other creatures too.
That's right.
Each other and every other thing which has been created on the planet. So when I think about spirituality, it's about being able to be in sync, to be in balance, to be connected to, in harmony with.
Okay. The universe. Okay.
Yes, with each other and with the Creator.
Got it. Would you say that Black people are spiritually bankrupt? Why or why not?
I wouldn't say that we're spiritually bankrupt. I would say that we're religiously misguided.
I'll take that.
Because at our core, we are a spiritual being.
Right.
So
let me ask you on that statement, Dr. Young. If at our core we are spiritual beings, does that mean we cannot be spiritually bankrupt?
I'm saying that's who we are, first and foremost. We are spiritual beings. We are a spiritual being having a physical experience in this body. The spirit will exist whether or not the physical body is here or not.
Right.
The spirit is eternal.
Okay.
So I would say that we're not spiritually bankrupt. I would say that we're religiously misguided because of our various ways of being. We find ourselves being in an environment that we've had the European religious doctrines imposed upon us. Yeah. And their way of knowing, their way of connecting with each other is about religion. It's about having that hierarchy.
That's right.
All the way from the Pope or the bishop or whatever they're called in the various faith-based traditions. Right. And just using that as a way to govern people, not to connect people, even though now, once again, to avoid dichotomous thinking, let me say that we know that there are various religious groups, organizations that have done some good.
Yes, sir. No doubt.
They've done a lot of good. Yep. But at the same time, we know that just the opposite is true as well, because many have done an awful lot of evil. Excuse me for a second. I need to make sure my battery is hooked up to this computer. I should have my power cord. So pardon me just for a second.
All right.
Plug this in. Okay. Here we are. Yes.
Yep. Okay.
So that would be it. We have to be able to really understand that, yes, we have a lot of faith-based traditions which have done a lot of good.
Yep.
And we also have some which have done a lot of harm. So rather than using a broad brush, I would just say we have to really understand them for what they are, what good they've done, and also what harm religion has done.
Yeah. Yeah. So on that note, would you say that our Black people, our current connection to our religions, whatever religion we decide to follow, would you say that's moving us forward or holding us back?
Well, I would specify, it depends what we use our religion for.
Okay.
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 What do we use it for?
So what are Black people using their religions for?
Well, some Black folks use it as a way of grounding. In fact, and I'll give you one example without naming the denomination, but there's one particular faith-based tradition which is highly fundamentalist.
Okay.
They're very conservative. They take literal the King James version of the Bible.
Okay.
Not really knowing why King James created his version of the Bible.
Politics.
Anyway, that's a whole other issue. But they take it to very much at its written word. Okay.
Okay.
Now, some people have gotten connected with that faith-based tradition. They had some traumatic experiences. They've had some bad things happen to them. There've been some things that they've engaged in that they're not proud of.
Yeah.
And when they found themselves being attracted to this particular faith-based tradition, they begin to get their behaviors in line.
Okay.
And I would say the same thing about Islam.
Yep.
So there are some people with the Nation of Islam. I knew many back in Chicago.
Sure.
Who had been involved with all kinds of shady behavior.
Right. Yeah.
And when they got with the Nation, they used it as a way to really get their lives together in a way that they were not engaged in some of the same destructive behaviors previously. So once again, it depends what people use this for.
Okay.
There are some people on the other extreme who are they're the holier than thou. Every other word that they say is Jesus or if God is willing, or if Allah is willing, it's like, okay, but yet you look at how they behave toward other human beings.
Right.
And it's not what they're professing. So once again, it depends upon what you use this for.
Got it.
Religion in itself is not bad, nor is it good. It's a matter of what we use this for.
Right. I can dig it. It's like a gun. The gun is not bad or good. It depends on who's using it for what.
Yes.
I got it.
And that's it. And religion is, in my mind, the same thing.
Yeah. It's a tool, or it can be a tool.
Yes.
Amen. Okay. How do you define evil?
Evil is causing harm to other living things.
Can the person be born evil?
Intentional harm.
Okay.
Intentional. And that would be it. Intentional harm to other living things. And I'll narrow that down. We'll say to other human beings.
Not living things, human beings.
Yes. I'll specify that only because for those of us who are not vegetarians, you cause some major harm to a chicken wing.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so I'm not going there. I'm talking about human beings.
Gotcha. Okay. So
when we think about the question about can some people be born evil?
Yes, sir. Yes.
It goes totally against my psychological training. But I've seen it.
Okay.
I've seen it personally.
How so?
Individuals who are just evil, they have no regard for anyone else.
Okay.
Or they have no regard for certain other people.
Okay.
And they'll do any kind of harm to them because they feel justified.
Okay. So if a person can be born evil, then how do we, if at all, fix that? Or is it a matter of that is evil and it has to be destroyed?
Okay. Well, not to get into any dichotomous thinking again, but let me put it this way. If someone is born evil and they intend on doing evil to you personally, you can do one of two things. You can destroy them, or you can contain them.
Okay.
You cannot negotiate with them because their objective is to
do evil,
kill or destroy you.
That's right.
Period.
That's right.
So there's no negotiation. You just simply contain, or you have to destroy them.
Amen. Amen. And we have to be real with that because that's reality.
Yeah.
Evil exists.
It does, just like good exists.
Yeah. Amen. It's a balance. The universe.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
And that's what the ancients told us.
I'm glad we were listening. So, okay. So I often say that Black people, we are born into a war that we didn't start. We're surrounded on every front, and we're over 350 years behind on preparing to fight this war. Would you agree with that assessment?
Essentially, yes, but the war started
before that?
Long time before then.
Okay.
I mean, just in terms of us being kidnapped and enslaved, yeah, the 350 works, but we know that we can go back to the ancient times.
Okay.
And I'll go back as far as Alexander the Thief.
Okay.
Because from that point on, our continent has been constantly under siege.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Everybody wants what Africa has, but no one wants to pay for it.
That's right. Hey, John Henry Clark.
Exactly. I was about to say his name because that's where it came from. So we've been under constant attack as a people globally. For thousands of years. So these last 350 is just another segment of an ongoing war against us.
They continue
because they want the continent. They want the resources on the continent.
Right.
And we are also the resources.
Right.
That's why they enslaved so many of us, because they saw us as a resource for their economic development.
Okay. Okay. I'll take that. And is this war that we are born into that's been going on for a very long time, is it only fought on a physical level or in the physical realm?
Well, I would dare say that it's spiritual warfare, but it's on the physical level as well. And it's on a psychological level.
Okay.
It's all of the above.
Physical, spiritual, and psychological.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. On all levels.
All right.
And when we see this manifested in so many different ways.
Come on.
Okay.
Give me an example.
Well, on the psychological level, the educational system is a Eurocentric, white supremacist educational system. So it really celebrates the conquest of Europeans. It celebrates what is important to them. It celebrates what they consider to be beautiful, and it's not us.
That's right. That's right.
And it celebrates war and warmongering.
That's right.
So it's a very warlike culture that has been created, and also that we've been educated into.
That's right.
On the spiritual level, we know that that the European church, and I'll be very specific about that, is that when they began to invade Africa and building their fortresses, or they call them their castles.
Yes, sir.
I was at one in Ghana some years ago, and in the middle of the church, in the middle of the dungeons fortress was a church.
Okay.
They saw absolutely no contradiction between raping and murdering and kidnapping
in the church.
And just right outside was a church.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like they did not see the contradiction because in their mind, they're looking at God in a very, very different way.
That's right.
A very different way.
Yeah.
Because if they looked at the Creator in the same eyes, the same lenses that we did, they would have been able to honor our humanity, and that whole industry of slavery could have never existed.
Right.
But because they don't.
Well, we know for them, religion is used oftentimes as a weapon of war.
Exactly.
And before the war starts, there's usually a religious person there trying to get you to get on board. And if you don't, then they bring in the guns and whatnot. So for them, religion is used as a weapon of war. So Dr. Young, Say that last statement again.
Yeah, the missionary and the mercenary are two sides of the same coin.
That's right. That's right. And you will see one or the other, if not both.
There you go. Yeah,
So
the other one will come.
Amen. Amen. For sure. That's in the book called what's the name of that book? I can't remember. Hopefully it'll come to me before we're done. So can we win this physical, psychological, and mental war that's been waged against us? Can we win without fighting back physically, psychologically, and mentally?
No.
So we have to meet that.
Absolutely. There's no winning if you don't defend yourself. Amen. We have to defend ourselves on all fronts.
That's right.
So yes, we have to walk and chew bubble gum at the same time. We have to be able to multitask because we're being attacked and have been attacked on every front.
That's right.
We have to defend every front.
That's right.
Economically, physically, spiritually, psychologically. So being able to develop those institutions and those practices which will shore us up, reinforce us, strengthen us.
Yes, sir.
This process is about.
I call that reality of having to fight on multiple fronts. I call that being Black.
Yes.
Because we've fought, existed, got along with, operated on multiple levels, multiple fronts our entire lives, especially here in this country. It's what we do. And if anybody can do it, it most certainly can be us. So Dr. Young, you said that a person that is born evil has to be destroyed or contained, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
So we know that evil exists. We know that there's evil out here, and the only way we're going to be able to protect ourselves from it is to confront it, deal with it, and or contain it, correct?
Yes.
Amen. All right, so tell us about Tutmost Academy.
Okay, Tutmost Academy is a private school that I started in 1996. It was created out of some mentoring programs that I had created for high-risk kids, particularly African Americans in the Colorado Springs area where I live. Initially, all of the people who were involved with my program were high school students, high school males. They were court ordered into my program as an alternative to going to juvenile detention.
Gotcha.
These were kids who were involved in drive-bys, selling drugs at the schools, involved in physical assaults and a lot of other type of behaviors that get them in front of the juvenile judge. Yeah. And since the courts were aware of my background working with the State Parole Board, when I had created my mentoring programs as a way to stem the tide of so many of our kids going into the system, they knew who I was. So they were willing to send these probationers to my program as an alternative to going to long-term detention facilities. Yeah. So out of that, we taught anger management, critical thinking skills, alternatives to violence. There was a manhood development program, a rites of passage program, which had built into it the life skills training that we were doing. And after, actually that program started in, 1994. A couple of years later, I decided to start a private school because the state law was such that kids who were expelled from public school, and in Colorado, charter schools are public schools, they cannot attend any public school at all. Okay. So they were just SOL.
Yeah, they were just out.
They were out in more ways than one.
Yeah.
So we know that in high schoolers, particularly, if they're not in school, they're going to be into some kind of trouble.
Yeah, they're going to be in trouble. Yeah. Because
they have all day to figure out.
They're going to do something. Yeah.
Exactly. And usually they won't be at home watching TV or reading books.
Yes, sir.
They'll be out and about doing something that they should not be engaged in. So because the kids who I was working with had these type of educational challenges, I decided to start a private school. Okay. And we started off with all freshmen, boys and girls, because I made a co-ed because some of the young ladies were having the same issues that the boys were having. Yep. And I funded the school out of my pocket for the first 2 years. I bought an office building and paid the salaries for the teachers for the first couple of years.
Okay. How much did it cost to get it started?
Ooh.
That much? Six figures?
Oh yeah. The office building itself was like 300,000.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Go ahead.
But it ultimately cost me about $500,000.
Okay.
And I'm not a wealthy person, but when I was growing up in Chicago, the old folks would always tell me, to whom much is given, much is required.
Yes, sir.
And also to always be very mindful about reaching back and giving to our folk, because there were people who made it possible for us to exist.
Always.
So when I started the school, I knew that I was spending a lot of my personal money, but it was okay.
Right.
I knew that ultimately we were going to make a difference in the lives of these kids.
Mm-hmm.
So I started the private school. It was called Tutmosis Academy.
Mm-hmm.
Tutmosis referring to Tutmosis III, pharaoh of ancient Kemet, who built temples to last, and we were building people to last.
Amen.
And endure. So we had a program where we incorporated the mentors into the educational system that we had created with the school.
Okay.
Prior to starting the school, the mentors were paid. These were not big brothers, big sisters type of mentors, but they were paid. They were full-time. They carried pagers, and they were available 24/7.
Okay.
When we started the school, I incorporated the mentors into the school so that they were in the classroom with the teachers.
Mm-hmm.
So if there was a problem that one of the young people had, the mentor would address it so the teacher could continue teaching.
Right.
It worked out real well because we became extended family with these kids.
That's right. Yeah, and those relationships matter.
That's it. That is it. Yes. So a mother could call us at 2:00 in the morning about the knucklehead son having come in late, maybe intoxicated, and we would go to the home and do an intervention rather than her calling the police.
That's right. Awesome. And that's awesome, Dr. Young, because to me that's community.
Yes.
You don't call an outside a force that you know is outside and oppressive when you got a community that you can also call that's going to come with love and respect. So amen. Go ahead.
Exactly. And it worked real well because once again, we became, if you will, the cousins
I got it.
In the family. So the school actually won the El Pomar Award for Excellence in Education. El Pomar Foundation is a huge foundation in Colorado. They own the Broadmoor Hotel, which is probably the premier resort hotel in Colorado. And each year they give out about a dozen different awards from different areas. There was never an educational institution other than a college or a university that ever received the El Pomar Award for Excellence in Education. And we received it because our kids, our students actually excelled more than some of the regular public high schools had done.
Wow. Okay.
Our students wore uniforms before any other public school in the city wore uniforms. Okay. And we had actually created a culture within the school that was very African-centered and very supportive.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, after we won the El Pomar Award in Excellence in Education in 1999, about a year later, we had 9/11. And during 9/11, a lot of the funding that was available for nonprofits such as myself dried up. And the money was going toward 9/11 relief. And also we had some horrible forest fires in Colorado that same year as 9/11. And we just simply could not afford to maintain the school. So I had the option to either lay myself off or lay off a couple of teachers. So I laid myself off and went back to work for the state of Colorado at that time. And I left the school in the hands of the board of directors, and they could not maintain the vision, and they let the school go by the wayside after a couple of years.
Wow. They weren't able to maintain the vision because you weren't there to crack the whip, or because of something else?
Because they really didn't have the vision so much to begin with.
Oh,
To them, it was just a school.
oh, so they didn't get it.
For me, it was a mission.
Yeah, amen. And that matters.
Yeah.
Motivation and perspective matters. Okay, so what was your operating budget on average annually?
Let's see. Wow. It wasn't very much. It was only about 250,000.
Oh, that's not bad. That's not bad. Okay. So have you thought about how that could be brought back to life?
Yes, in fact, one of my dreams would be if I won the lottery, I would start the school back, but with my money. I would not use any public funding at all.
Yeah.
I would just simply do it the old-fashioned way.
That is a good answer. I'm not sure about the lotto, but we're gonna make that happen. So can the tenets of Tutmos be taught online as well as off? Can we do this thing both in the real world, hands-on, as well as using technology to reach as many kids as possible?
Well, the technology exists, whereas it didn't exist when I started the school.
Right, I'm talking about today.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, amen, amen. Okay, so in closing, remind everyone, Dr. Young, as to why they should vote for you in the upcoming Black Gold National Leadership Election over our National Wellness Department. Why you, Dr. Young?
Well, I have about 4.5 decades of experience.
Yes, sir.
I've been a proven leader with a national organization before. That's the National Association of Black Psychologists. I served as national president 2000 to 2001. I've been in various other leadership positions throughout the years, both in the field of psychology, but as well as within the community. I'm the founder of the Colorado Springs citywide Kwanzaa celebration that we've been doing for the last 32 years.
Awesome.
Continuously.
Yes, sir.
And I'm African-centered. I believe that first and foremost, we have to use our knowledge base, our philosophy, our spirituality, our beingness as the core of any solutions regarding Black folks. We cannot look to the people who have enslaved us or who hope to enslave us.
That's right.
As models of anything other than something to avoid.
Yep, that sounds like John Henry Clark. He said, if an answer has to be given for African people, it has to come from African people. No European answer has ever had African people. So yeah, amen.
Absolutely.
Amen.
And I firmly believe that we are the best guardians and guides for ourselves.
Yes, sir.
And once again, we're a very resilient people. We've beat the odds against the odds every time that we realize that we have the will to do that.
Yes, sir.
So being able to use my background in psychology to help us identify ways in which we can grow healthier, mentally, spiritually, and physically, something which I'm very much attuned to. And I have some background in doing that on a smaller scale, certainly, but certainly those same methods apply on a much larger scale as well.
Okay.
I've worked both with the youth as well as with adults, dealing with our mental wellness.
That's right.
I would say mental wellness, not mental illness. You know, we know about the things that make us sick. I'm talking about the things that can make us well.
That's right.
And they can actually heal us. And we have to do this while we're protecting ourselves. So our mind, body, and soul have to be protected on all fronts, and being able to have some very clear methods to address that. Those which are things that people can do in their daily lives, as well as what we can do collectively to support each other's efforts.
I've talked about the shrine a lot because it was very influential into me becoming the brother that I am, and I like who I am. I was very fortunate and blessed, Dr. Young, to have lived in a community here in Houston, Texas for over 20 years, whereby we control the environment. Everything was Black leadership, Black people, Black messages. I got 3 kids. My kids were taught how to read, write, pray, meditate, potty train, martial arts from Black people. They didn't worry about food, security, you know, the way my children were raised, every Black child needs the same opportunity to be raised in a peaceful, holistic, African-centered environment. Do you believe, as you just said, do you believe we can be mentally whole, spiritually whole, physically safe without separating ourselves from this European system? Do we have to create our own system and our own space so we can be free and whole?
Both of the above. First and foremost, because we are right here in America.
Yes, sir.
Our ancestors built this nation.
That's right.
We have ownership. You know, the people who rule this country, whether or not they want to acknowledge it, they owe us.
Yes, sir.
Now, we're not going to wait around for reparations for them to decide whether or not they're going to give us something. In the meantime, we're going to buy our land. We're going to create our businesses.
Yes, sir.
Develop our minds, and also make our homes healthier at the same time. But we are here in the USA, so being able to do both is important. We have to create an African-centered space in the European setting.
That's right.
That's what Brother Haki Mahabouti said some years ago. You know,
Yes,
a publisher of Third World Press.
Yep.
So we have to create that space, that safe space, and just expand upon it. So we have a safe haven. We have a place where we can be ourselves, where we can be healthy, where we can be nurtured, and where we can be strengthened, and as well as protected.
That's right. And we have to understand that all of that is not going to come from the outside in. It has to come from us. I like to remind people, ain't nobody coming to save Black people.
Nobody coming for us but us.
That's right. And we don't need anybody else, because we all have people like yourself who have the ability, who have the understanding, the expertise to be a part of something that matters, which is why we're doing all of this. So last two questions, Dr. Young. The national election is in June. It's online. Our inauguration is in October. We all come together in Houston to meet, greet, workshop, learn, strategize, dance a little bit because we Black. After the inauguration, everybody goes back to their respective cities. If you win the election, as I said earlier, what would be your plan to get people moving in their respective cities? You said we're going to start with what we call the SWOT analysis, understanding where we are, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and then we go from there. So if the SWOT analysis, I take that back. The cabinet, those that did not win, they are your cabinet. That's step one. We established the cabinet because you got to have a group. People that speak your language that you can build with. So step one, establish the cabinet, no problem. Step two, everybody work on their SWOT analysis so we understand what we're dealing with and what we're working with. What would be step three per Dr. Young's leadership and guidance?
Step three would be to continue to identify those members within our own community which can assist in the process. Because we have to have enough worker bees.
Amen. Amen.
Otherwise, we have the best process in the world and no one to work it.
That's right.
At the same place that we were.
Right. A bunch of generals and no soldiers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then being able to really set out some very doable objectives.
Yes, sir.
Measurable.
Yeah.
I'm very firm on having objectives which are very specific, measurable, achievable,
yes, sir,
realistic, and time bound. So we set a time frame to accomplish any particular objective, but we have to be real clear about what we can do within our various communities.
Yes, sir.
Based upon the available resources, because we're looking at a nationwide effort, but yet it's all based upon the various cities that we have the Black Gold Nation in, building there and building from there.
Yes, sir.
So that would be the next thing to do, being able to identify some very clear, measurable, doable objectives that we can build success upon, because we know that nothing works like success but success.
Amen.
And rather than taking on something too huge, do something that we can actually accomplish and celebrate within a short time frame.
That's right.
And keep building.
And then build upon
it. Yes, and that will attract other people who will see the success and say, I want to be part of that.
Amen. Amen. Cool. That's another good answer. You're doing pretty good tonight. I got to give it to you, brother. You're doing a good job.
I'm just being myself. I'm sorry.
Amen. Don't be anybody else. Okay. Last question, Dr. Anthony. Based on everything we've discussed tonight, if you could only give everyone who's watching live, everyone who watches the recording, you could only give them one takeaway from anything we discussed tonight that they will have with them for the rest of their lives. You can only give them one takeaway from everything we've discussed that they will have with them for the rest of their lives. What would that one takeaway be?
The takeaway would be we can accomplish whatever we decide to accomplish because we have a legacy of beating the odds against the odds when we understand that we have the will to do so.
Yes, sir. When you first started talking and you were making your statement, I thought about Marcus Garvey, up ye mighty race, accomplish what you will.
That's right. And we have to have the will. We have to have the will to do it. But we've been beaten down so much that we doubt our own capability. So we have to strengthen ourselves so that we feel our own self-efficacy.
Yes, sir. So
important.
I'm sorry, say that last part again.
We have to be able to experience our own self-efficacy, being effective and being able to be efficient about the things that we seek to do.
Yes, sir. Amen. So I want to remind everyone why we are doing this interview and why we're having this leadership election. We have to understand that in order for us to move forward in this country and build what we need to build for the sake of our people, our children, every generation of Black child to follow, we cannot do that without leadership. We cannot do that without a firm foundation to build upon, and we cannot do that without spirituality. Fortunately for us, there are people like Dr. Anthony P. Young that exists. We're having this conversation in real time. This is a real life brother who has experience and expertise in being a part of what we have to build for ourselves, because as he said, no one's coming to save us. But as we agreed, that's okay, because we don't need anybody to save us. We can't save ourselves because we have all the pieces. We're simply not on the same page. And what we're trying to do via the Black Gold Nation is find those pieces. Dr. Young is one piece, but he cannot do it by himself. He and I might be two pieces, but we cannot do it by ourselves. We are being attacked in multiple areas, on multiple planes of existence. This war that we're born into that's been going on for a very long time is both physical, spiritual, mental, is tangible and intangible. As Dr. Young said earlier, some of the things that we've accomplished, we were able to accomplish them because we were operating at a higher level. We're not operating at that level right now, but we have to get back to it if we don't want to become a permanent underclass and if we're going to survive. And what we're trying to do is not just survive, but we want to survive and thrive in style because it's who we are. We're looking for people like Dr. Young who have expertise, have experience, they have understanding, but more importantly, as he has proven, they must have an undying love and commitment to Black people. Because if you don't have an undying love and commitment, you will quit on Black people because you won't understand what you're dealing with and what you're up against. But again, he is one brother in, I would normally say one area, but he's one brother in two areas, psychology and youth development, obviously. But there are other areas by which we have to find leadership like this brother who can be a part of what we're trying to build. And if we don't find these people, and we know they exist, we're going to have gaps in our defense, and we can't afford to have gaps in our defense because we know other people study us. They watch us. They're not going to attack us where we're strong. They're not going to attack on Dr. Young's front because he has that front covered. They're going to attack us where we don't have Dr. Young's. So we have to find the Dr. Young's in all the areas by which we're being attacked so that we can survive, so that we can build a nation of our own, so we can be at peace and be who and what we're supposed to be. And of course, if we don't do that, we're simply not going to make it. And our goal in the Black Gold Nation is to not just make it, but do like Dr. Young said initially, we have to build systems and societies that we can control so we can be everything that we're supposed to be, and we can understand who and what we are, and we can get the world back into balance because we African people are now in balance. And of course, that is the goal. So with that, Dr. Young, do you have any closing comments and or remarks you would like to say to everyone who's watching live and those who watch the recording? Anything you want to say in closing?
Oh, yes, in closing, I'd like to say that I'm very, very happy. I'm ecstatic that Black Gold Nation exists.
Yes, sir.
I know that throughout the years, there have been various organizations which have come and gone, but we will be here as long as we want to be. And, our people are always in need. So the need will not go away. So we have to be willing to step up to address the need rather than hoping that someone else would do it.
That's right.
And lastly, I would say that everyone has obligations, commitments. Most of us work, or you have other obligations such as family and what have you. So it's important to be able to do what you can. And no one can do everything, but everyone can do something. And being able to identify that thing is that you can do, and do it well, and live up to your word, whatever you commit to do, just do it. As little, as large as it is, because together we'll be much, we will actually advance much better by everyone doing what they can do versus people not doing what they claim they're going to do.
That's right. That's right.
So it's about keeping your word and just giving what you can in terms of time and effort and energy, because the problem has existed for a long time. It's not going to go away overnight. So we give what we can as long as we can.
That's right.
Ashe,
brother. On that note, I'm going to close out with two things I'd like to end all of my meetings, presentations, interviews with. And you just said one, which is why I was laughing so much. I'm like, this brother stole my notes. So the first one, the first statement is always remember, and you just said it, man, always remember that no one can do everything, but if everyone does something, everything will get done. And absolutely, always, always, always remember that nothing is more sacred than the liberation, empowerment, freedom, and salvation of Black people. Because if Black people don't make it, I don't care what you're doing. I don't care what you're involved with. I don't care what you're passionate about. If your people don't make it, you're not going to make it because you are connected to your people, even if you don't realize it. So on that note, Dr. Young, I sincerely appreciate it. We are most certainly going to be connected until we leave this physical plane of existence, because we have work to do. And as you said earlier, we can. So we are going to. So with that, brother, thank you very much. God bless. I will be in touch and I appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you. Have a good evening. I gave you a whole 5 minutes before your next meeting.
Thank you.
That's what you call Black love right there.
I need something to eat.
Bye-bye.